It's the second day of the U.S.-brokered ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, which has so far brought a fragile calm to the region. No cross-border attacks have been reported thus far, and while Israeli Air Force patrols continue to monitor the skies over Lebanon, no attacks have been carried out. On the ground, Israeli forces remain deployed, with some units stationed as far as the Litani River. Under the terms of the U.S.-mediated ceasefire, the Israeli military has 60 days to withdraw to the Blue Line, the internationally recognized border between Israel and Lebanon. In the coming weeks, the Lebanese army is set to gradually replace Israeli forces in southern Lebanon. Their mandate includes preventing any hostile activity, particularly from Hezbollah, directed towards Israel. The Israeli military confirmed that no forces have yet withdrawn from southern Lebanon. Instead, they remain on high alert to prevent Hezbollah from reestablishing positions near the border. IDF warnings have also been issued to Lebanese civilians, advising them not to return to villages in the area just yet, while the situation still remains volatile. Despite these warnings, long lines of vehicles carrying displaced families have been seen heading south, with many determined to return to their homes. For many, the chance to reclaim their homes outweighs the risks. The mass return of civilians has already led to moments of tension and conflict in areas still under Israeli control. There have been several incidents involving civilians and possibly Hezbollah operatives attempting to approach border villages. The IDF has detained a few individuals identified as Hezbollah members near their positions, and roads leading to certain areas remain blocked to prevent unauthorized access. Meanwhile, hours after the ceasefire with Hezbollah took effect, Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, vowed to enforce the agreement. He highlighted that Israel's immediate focus would now shift towards securing a hostage deal with Hamas in Gaza.
תוצאות המערכה בצפון יוצרות לחץ נוסף על החמאס, ובכוונתנו ובכוונתי לעשות כל מאמץ כדי לייצר את התנאים לעסקת חטופים חדשה ולהחזיר את כולם הביתה.
The 60-day cessation of hostilities document has been made public and sets out the commitments being made by Israel and Lebanon. Hezbollah is not a party to the agreement, but its activities are prohibited south of the Litani River. There is also an unpublished letter of guarantees given by Washington to Jerusalem. ILTV Steve Leibowitz reports.
The text of the cessation of hostilities document sets out commitments by Israel and Lebanon intended to end the direct contact between Israel and Hezbollah, with enemy forces pulled back behind the Litani River. This will include the gradual IDF pullout and its replacement by the Lebanese army. This would eventually enable civilians on both sides of the Blue Line marking the northern frontier to return safely to their homes within a reasonable amount of time.
We don't have to be fast. We have to be smart, and we have to be effective, because what we don't want is a repeat of 2006 when the war ended and there was no implementation of the deal, which brought us to the war that we had this year and the such tragic loss of life on all sides.
Not made public are the contents of a U.S. side letter to Israel. Details reported by Channel 12 said the letter includes guarantees that the U.S. has provided to Israel, affirming Israel's right to defend itself against renewed threats.
The Israeli military that is on the ground in the first 2-3 kilometers from the border will remain in place for now. As the Lebanese army will redeploy back down to the south, the Israeli forces will leave. So this is not that it will take 60 days for the Israeli forces to leave the country, to leave the territory, but rather the first forces will leave over the next several days or first couple of weeks, and gradually over 60 days they will all depart.
According to the report, the U.S. commits to provide Israel with intelligence that Hezbollah is attempting to infiltrate the ranks of the Lebanese army. The letter also reiterates the U.S. commitment to cooperate with Israel to prevent Iran from destabilizing Lebanon by smuggling weapons to Hezbollah. Perhaps most importantly, the letter reportedly supports Israel's right to act in response to threats from inside Lebanon.
And joining me now to discuss all of this is Brigadier General in Reserves Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of the IDSF. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now let's delve into the details of this widely discussed ceasefire. We just heard some of the key terms of the agreement, but what do you think it will actually achieve?
Well, I think that there are several considerations that Israel had when it went to this agreement. One of them is really working on good terms with the administration We remember Obama's administration, the way it ended with the administration not backing up Israel in the Security Council. I think it's very important to Israel to cooperate with the administration and also make sure that munitions and other equipments are sent to Israel to sustain the war. I also think that Israel feels that we have pretty much degraded Hezbollah the best we can. Almost all the targets the army had were targeted. And at this stage, we're on the way to go back to some kind of attrition war. So this seemed a very good moment to do this ceasefire, be able to really make sure that our ground forces are moved out of Lebanon, sent to Gaza, but also many soldiers, especially in reserve, will be sent home. And the big question is the enforcement. This is the test of the IDF and the government, enforcing this agreement in a way that will make sure that Hezbollah is not going to be in South Lebanon, but also that it cannot rebuild itself again anywhere in Lebanon.
What challenges do you foresee in implementing this agreement?
I think there will be many challenges because Hezbollah will try to rebuild itself. It will try to reach, again, towns near the Israeli border. And this is the Israeli test to rely first and foremost on ourselves, making sure we enforce this agreement. If we see terror activity, we attack. We're not afraid to go back to war if we need to. From now onwards, Hezbollah must never again be able to rebuild itself. This is the test of Israel. And what I heard from high-ranking officers in the army is that Israel, is not trusting not the Lebanese army and not international forces. It understands that we really need to rely on ourselves. Anything that will happen, which is not the IDF enforcing, it's a bonus. It's not something we are relying on.
How do you envision this deal being enforced to ensure that it doesn't simply lead to a return to the same patterns of conflict we've seen over and over in the past? What needs to be different this time?
Well, Israel will monitor constantly everything that's going on. In any case where the Lebanese army or the US, France, will not make sure that the dismantling of Hezbollah continues and not make sure that they cannot rebuild themselves. If Israel doesn't see really them doing the job, Israel will act and attack again and again, making sure Hezbollah won't be able to rebuild itself. But apart of talking about that, we have to remember that Israel now is shifting the center of gravity to Iran. And we understand that if we want to really push forward the dismantling of the whole Shia axis and also Hezbollah, the real solution is attacking the head of the snake. And the big challenge for Israel now is to get the new administration on board and attack the nuclear sites and the military capabilities of Iran. This is what is needed to really bring a decisive victory and bring down the Shia axis all over the Middle East and not just in Lebanon.
And I was actually wondering if this is a shift of focus to the hostage deal with Hamas in Gaza, but we'll leave that to another interview another time. Amir Avivi, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Residents of northern Israel remain on edge as they cautiously return to the area to assess the damage from weeks of conflict, even as skepticism grows over the newly brokered ceasefire with Lebanon. ILTV's executive editor, Mayan Hoffman, has more.
Residents of northern Israel are cautiously returning to assess the damage to their homes. Most are not planning to stay now, but are deciding if it's safe enough to begin repairs or even consider moving back. The ceasefire, brokered by the United States and France, is being hailed as a rare diplomatic success. It comes after a year of conflict on two fronts and several proxy battles in the region. Despite this, the agreement has stirred anger and fear among northern residents. Many are skeptical that anything has truly changed on the border. They warn that Hezbollah remains a threat and could regain its ability to launch attacks on Israel. Some fear that if Israel withdraws from Lebanon now, Hezbollah might attempt a ground assault, similar to the devastating attack by Hamas on October 7th. Residents also voiced mistrust of the United Nations and its UNIFIL forces in southern Lebanon, doubting their ability to maintain peace. More than 65,000 residents of northern Israel remain displaced. Many are heeding Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's advice to wait and see if the ceasefire holds before returning home, even if they have homes to return to.
כל העבודה המבורכת שצה"ל עשה, לצערי זה ילך לטמיון. הם ישקיעו את כל המאמץ, ישקמו את הכל בחזרה, ולצערי תושבי הצפון הולכים לשלם על זה.
Farmer Amichai Biton from Avivim, a village less than a kilometer from the Lebanese border, returned to inspect the damage to his parents' home. His family has been displaced since October 8th, when Hezbollah began firing rockets into Israel in coordination with Hamas.
הפסקת אש שטות גדולה לדעתי, כי כלום לא השתנה. מחר יהיה עוד פעם פיצוצים, מחר הם יעברו את המנהרות שעדיין לא מצאו, והם יגיעו אלינו ויקחו אותנו שלמים.
So far, Hezbollah has fired more than 16,000 missiles at Israel, resulting in the deaths of approximately 45 civilians in the northern region.
In a major development, Israel has formally appealed the International Criminal Court's decision to issue arrest warrants against its leaders. Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham has weighed in with a strong warning to international allies. ILTV's Ariel Alahiani has more.
Israel is pushing back against the ICC's recent arrest warrants targeting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. In a statement, the Prime Minister's office called the decision absurd and baseless, both factually and legally. The appeal argues that these warrants reflect deep bias against Israel and challenge the court's legitimacy. Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, speaking in Jerusalem, issued a stark warning to nations considering compliance with the ICC's move.
I am going back to Congress and introduce legislation very soon that would sanction any country that tried to enforce the arrest warrant against Israel. So you could be a close ally, Canada, Britain, France, you name it. If you buy into this arrest warrant as legitimate, then you're going to meet stiff bipartisan resistance in America.
Graham also addressed the broader challenges in Gaza. He emphasized that the U.S. would not take responsibility for rebuilding or governing the region. Instead, he urged Arab nations, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, to lead reconstruction efforts, envisioning a peaceful Gaza existing alongside Israel. With tensions high, Israel's appeal could deepen international debates over the ICC's authority and impartiality. The outcome may further impact diplomatic relations and future U.S. actions. The stakes are high for Israel, the ICC, and their allies.
Turning to Israel's economy, the country is facing challenges, but Dror Bin, head of the Israel Innovation Authority, recently told ILTV executive editor Mayan Hoffman that he anticipates a baby boom of startups when this war ends. Let's take a look at that clip.
What kind of innovations or developments are currently emerging driven by the events of October 7th?
I expect a baby boom of startups after the war. People were drawn out of their comfort zone. People used to go to the same place every day, and because of the war, because they were called to army duty or because they volunteered in some program, and they met new people, they saw new needs. And this is why I expect to see this baby boom of startups, also technologies that have dual use, that were used for the war, may after the war be adjusted for civil use. So I believe there will be an impact. And we saw it, by the way, in previous crises, that after the crisis there was more entrepreneurship than even before.
To help these new companies thrive, Israel will need qualified engineers. Afeka Academic College of Engineering in Tel Aviv is producing such engineers. However, many are serving in the reserves and need special support to complete their studies. Afeka is here to help. Learn more about Afeka as one campaign by scanning the QR code on your screen. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, now 89 years old, has designated Rahi Fatouh as his temporary successor in the event the presidency becomes vacant. Fatouh is a former speaker of the Palestinian Legislative Council and also briefly served as interim president after Yasser Arafat's death. Here to discuss this with me is Lieutenant Colonel in Reserves Maurice Hirsch of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Thank you for joining us, Maurice.
Hi.
Maurice, what is the significance of President Abbas naming a successor? Could it mean that his health is deteriorating, or could external pressures have played a larger role than officials are admitting?
So we cannot underestimate really the importance of this announcement. It really is the announcement by Abu Mazen of the death of the PA. And let me explain that for a second. Rauchi Fatouh used to be the Speaker of the Palestinian Legislative Council, which was the Palestinian parliament created by the Oslo Accords. He has for many years not in that position. After the 2006 elections, he was replaced by Abdelaziz Dweck from Hamas. In 2018, Abbas really dissolved the Palestinian parliament and really calling for elections that never happened again. Rauchi Fatouh is now the head of the PLO Legislative Council, not the PA Legislative Council, the PLO Legislative Council. And what Abbas is saying is that really the PA has ceased to exist. It has been entirely usurped by the PLO and its mechanisms, and the Speaker of that PLO parliament will then replace him until the next elections happen, if they ever do happen. Palestinians don't have a good record of holding elections. They've only held 2 elections for the parliament in their entire existence. In 1996, the first one, that remained the parliament until 2006, when there was new elections and Hamas won. Since then, no Palestinian parliament has actually functioned. Abbas has been a dictator, issuing what is known as laws by decree. That means a dictator issuing laws that everyone needs to follow. And by appointing Fatouh as his replacement, he's really saying that the PLO has now entirely overtaken the PA.
Now, how is Fatouh viewed within the Palestinian political circles, and does he have the support needed to fulfill this kind of interim role?
Absolutely not. Fatouh, also as the Speaker of the Parliament, was there only for the interim period between Arafat dying and that parliament being disbanded until the new elections happened. For the presidency, for Mahmoud Abbas in 2005, he doesn't have popular support among the people. He's only being appointed really as a functionary for the interim period until new elections happen. Now, unfortunately, as I just said, elections probably won't happen for a very long time. So he will just assume this position for an unending period of time, most likely. And even though he doesn't enjoy any of the support of the people on the street, recently asked, that when the Palestinians were recently asked who they see as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, only 17% went to Fatah, which is Abu Mazen, which is the PLO, which is Rauchi Fatouh in furtherance, and 47% said they wanted Hamas. So Fatah and all of its institutions, the PLO, which is dominated by Fatah, doesn't enjoy the popular support of the Palestinian people. And Rauchi Fatouh will be just another puppet dictator there to run the PA for the benefit, the financial benefit of Fatah and the PLO's other organizations, such as the PFLP and another internationally designated terrorist organization.
Now, what impact could this development have on the Palestinian Authority's relationship with Hamas?
Well, so Hamas really seized control of the Gaza Strip in 2007 after Mahmoud Abbas deposed the elected Hamas government of Ismail Haniyeh, and that caused the rift between Hamas on the one hand and Fatah, PLO, PA on the other hand, which has been going on since 2007. They keep on discussing reconciliation talks, which constantly fail. Hamas will never accept one of Fatah or the PLO's leaders as the representative of the Palestinians, because they believe that they were elected in 2006 in the last elections that happened. And now, if there were to be held elections again, they would win again. If you remember, in 2021, Abbas did call elections, and a month before they were meant to happen, he cancelled the elections after all of the polls showed that Hamas would win again and he would lose. And so Hamas is emboldened from every single direction possible. They see themselves as the legitimate representatives of the Palestinians. If they were only given the chance to elect, they would not elect Abbas or any of his cronies.
Lieutenant Colonel in Reserves Maurice Hirsch, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And now moving on, yesterday the fallen soldier Yonah Brief was laid to rest on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. Yonah was an Israeli-American. His funeral was attended by thousands, many of them from the Anglo community in Israel. ILTV's Devo Klein was at the funeral. Let's hear more.
I'm here at Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. Just behind me was the funeral of Sergeant Major Yonah Bezalel Brief. Yonah served in the IDF Commando Unit Duvdevan, and after being previously injured in May of 2023 and being discharged, he insisted on joining the battle efforts on October 7th. He fought valiantly in Kfar Aza and has been hospitalized in the ICU since then. On day 417 of the war, he succumbed to his wounds. Thousands of Israelis attended his funeral as he became a national symbol, touching many Israelis. All attended his funeral, including Knesset member Chili Trooper, who even shared a few words. Words were spoken and tears were shed, as Yonah was a national symbol who touched many Israelis. All came here to Mount Herzl to mourn his loss. We got to hear a little bit more about who Yonah was, a true IDF hero.
I was lucky to know Yonah as a kid. We went to camp together, and he was full of adventure and passion for life. They got caught up on the 7th of October when they ran down to Kfar Aza. There's a lot of things that happened that day, but the main thing and the main act was his commander Ben and Amir Fisher got caught in an ambush, and Yonah went in to save them. Yonah told me, this is his words, that he felt the first few bullets going through, and he said, it's not too bad, I could continue. And he decided to continue through that, to pull his commander and to try save their lives. And then he got hit more, and he understood throughout the whole time. And the people that I've spoken to, he knew what was happening to him. He knew that he was sacrificing his life, and he decided to continue anyway. And he was the best. He was cool. He was fun to be around. He was always in a group of friends. He was always connecting between people. In life, he just had that passion. And I think that's something I take from him, and I always looked up to him, that just to be passionate about everything we do.
May his memory be a blessing.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines, crafted with generations of expertise.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of around 11 degrees Celsius or 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we will continue to see cloudy skies with temperatures set to reach highs of about 19 degrees Celsius or 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the weekend, clear skies and cool nights are expected across the country. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Sivan Raviv. Be well, be safe, and thank you so much for watching.